Well, Oppenheimer is a 3-hour movie. It is by Christopher Nolan. It tells the story of, as you know by now, which is really not a spoiler, of whom they call the father of the atomic bomb. Um, was it Robert J. Oppenheimer? And how he went from a young student to being the head of the Manhattan Project for the U.S. government, which eventually created the atom bomb and helped end World War II. Then it also goes into a kind of the trials and tribulations that he's got to deal with in a backlash. I'll explain to it more, but that is kind of like that basic, non-spoiler as far as what the story covers. So it kind of covers I would say the late 20s all the way into the 60s. So it does span. Most of it does take place in the 50s in present time, and they go back and forth with the timeline, which at times can be a little challenging, but for the most part, this movie is a biopic drama. I am a huge biopic and history fan. Now, I know when I go to a movie for history, I'm thinking 50% of it's made up because for dramatic purposes, for timeline purposes, that's just what they have. That's just what they do. As long as they stay true to the essence, to the spirit of the story and the person or whatever that is happening, um, I'm good with a good historical biopic. Now, with this story, it affects every single living human being on this planet, which is really unlike any other biopic. Well, we know what we're doing, but we know what we're doing in creating the A bomb, but should we be doing it? And whose hands is it going to be in? So, a lot of huge more questions on humanity, on our principles that was done really well. Was done really well. Also, too, the filmmaking. The filmmaking, um, we saw it on an IMAX, absolutely gorgeous. Um, and again, because it's a biopic and drama, it's not it's not what you think. In the trailer, I think the trailer is a little misleading into thinking that there's going to be like, one experiment, explosion, and failure, one after the other, quick pace, kind of like a Hidden Figures or imitation game where it's almost like a breakneck speed. That's not this movie. You know, Christopher Nolan has his own sense of pace. And if you're not a Nolan fan, I don't think that this film is for you. If you're a Nolan fan, get on down here. Check this movie out. Because what he does is very different. He takes a conventional biopic story and he tells it how he tells it, as Nolan um, does well, can do well, like in Dunkirk, which I really enjoyed. I still have not seen Tenant. So those are my. Let me just say one more thing as well before we change it and go into spoilers. The cast. This cast is exceptional. Killian Murphy is mesmerizing. He's weird. He's disconnected. He's a visionary, and he's vulnerable. There's some great vulnerable moments. So I knew nothing about Oppenheimer, the man, just a weird looking dude who was in history books, father of the A bomb. But what Killian brought to this performance was all those adjectives that I just said. Who else do you have? Well, yes, you have admirable performances by Florence Pugh, Emily Blunt, uh, Kenneth Branagh, amongst others. But really, guys, the person that's pretty much steals the movie is Robert Downey Jr. And we'll get into his performance later. But let me tell you, it is so good to see Robert Downey Jr., the actor, again, not the movie star with Iron Man. For me, the last great, really memorable performance was, I believe, the Wonder Boys. Was that Curtis Hanson film where he played the agent who came into town for Michael Douglas? He was hilarious in that. This is not a comedic performance, but there is a little bit of a that snarkiness that comes out in his timing and his looks. But Robert Downey Jr. I sh- if we're talking awards, Killian and Robert Downey Jr. right off the bat nominees. Absolutely, absolutely. Okay, so those are my non-spoiler ideas and takes. The first part is really Oppenheimer's backstory and the creation of the team at Los Alamos and the creation of the A bomb. Then the second half of the movie becomes this kangaroo court in which the kind of like this off the record um, inquiry hearing with Oppenheimer and all the people involved that you saw in the movie. They're being interviewed because they're going after Oppenheimer and his ties to the Communist Party. So it's kind of you don't I didn't get it until I after I saw it, but the present time of this movie is actually the duration of this kangaroo court. And so it's a little bit more in the first half, less, and they're really playing the backstory for you, like who Oppenheimer is. And then really that second half, they're in that room being interviewed, being talked to, and you have Tony Goldwyn and several other character actors that are part of this little kind of secretive hearing, which was the actors were fantastic. And then really the relationship between Robert Downey Jr., who is a senator at the time, and Oppenheimer. He's an admiral who I believe, no, excuse me. Robert Downey Jr.'s character is Admiral Strauss, who I believe is a secretary in the cabinet. So that whole relationship is fantastic as far as the storyline because he's at the beginning and then all the way through. Robert Downey Jr.'s character really comes shining through the latter half of this film. So what I would have liked to have seen is either you cut it down or you have that intermission. I really felt a lot of the dramatic payoff was lost because of the Nolan pacing. It's not ruined. It just kept going. I want to talk about the imagery of Oppenheimer's visions, the sound, and the images you saw in the trailer. Okay, here's the plus. Those were amazing. And those are hinted at in and out of the film. It spoke to Oppenheimer's personal mental state and the visions that he has as far as the creations and the ideas behind the atom bomb and then getting together with other scientists, physicists, all that. Fascinating. But most of what you see in the trailer is in the film. It's all in the film, but there's not anything new in the film. Do you understand what I'm saying? They use a lot of those images over and over throughout the film. Nolan does it very well, and the sound is amazing and it looks incredible, but there's nothing new that is used throughout the film. So again, I go back to this biopic. This is not like, a a film that shows the atom bomb exploding, and there's this like 20-minute montage. It's not that, guys. You're seeing a lot of it in the trailer, which is, again, this is not a this is it's a pro and a con, right? I will say that when we finally get to that test at Los Alamos, yes, it is riveting. Yes, you've heard the countdown in the trailer. That is in there. What Nolan does, and this is a full spoiler, guys, what Nolan does is when the bomb goes off in Los Alamos, he cuts out all sound of the bomb. And the only thing you hear is the characters breathing, whether it's Oppenheimer or whether it's other people. And you're just like, wow, what is going on? So it really, what you get is how you would hear yourself in that moment. I loved it. I loved it. So it wasn't like, and then of course they backed it, and you got the sound, but that initial one was not there. It was the sound and score of the characters breathing, suffocation, fear. Oh man, that was done really well. Let me talk about the rated R. It is rated R. Okay, I believe it's 3 times, perhaps twice, that we see Florence Pugh full frontal, and there is, I believe, at least 2 sex scenes. Then there's a scene where they're just after the fact they're talking. In the relationship he has with Florence Pugh's character, when they're having sex, they stop, and she finds this Sanskrit book, and when he says that, oh yeah, I'm learning that language, she's like very, excited about that. So she's like, well, will you recite this for me? It's like, sure. So then they start making love again while he's reciting it, and she's like, do it in the language. He says it, and then he's like, what? And then she's like, what does it mean? And then it's this line: now I become death, destroyer of worlds. Like, while they're having sex, was pretty intense moment, guys. That was an intense moment. What they kept doing, because of Robert Downey Jr.'s character as the puppet master, they ultimately wanted to besmirch Oppenheimer's name with his connections to the Communist Party of the 20s and 30s. And of course, it's a very loose connection, and it's explained in the film, and his brother, and even Florence Pugh's character. They don't make Oppenheimer to be a savior at all. He's a weirdo. He's off-putting. He doesn't work well with others. He's in his own head a lot. He's a womanizer, and they show that all. But it's not just about that. Of course, it's about Oppenheimer's visions. Another thing too, I want to say is Kenneth Branagh is barely in this film. Basically, you're seeing a scene in the trailer. It's 1 or 2 scenes, so that's a little bit deceptive. Now, what's great is that you're getting a lot of Robert Downey Jr. And as I told you guys earlier, this is his best dramatic role in, I would say, 20 years. When was the last time I saw dramatic role? God, what's the last dramatic role I loved him in? You have to go back to Chaplin. It's like 30 years ago. So yeah, guys. I think that covers my notes. I think most of those really amazing visuals are in the trailer. They show them over and over again. The sound design's incredible. The editing's incredible. And of course, also too, you have Emily Blunt, Matt Damon, very serviceable. Not in it as much as you would think. Robert Downey Jr.'s senator's aide is played by Alden Ehrenreich, who was Han Solo. He was fantastic. I'm so happy this guy got a good role that can show off his dramatic side. He kind of plays the innocence of America and how the political system works. He did not like that Strauss was screwing over Oppenheimer. So I don't want to ruin it, but Alden's character has a key little part. Jason Clarke played Roger Robb. He was part of the Kangaroo Court. You've seen him in a lot of films. Tony Goldwyn. But for me, the actor that stole the movie was Robert Downey Jr. Plays a very paranoid, power hungry, politically savvy Levi Strauss. Basically, he is Oppenheimer's number one fan. If Oppenheimer had a fan club, Strauss would have been the president. And like Selena, he tries to pull Yolanda Saldivar and kill him, and he tries to kill him publicly. And really besmirches his legacy, who he is. Fantastic role. I can't praise him enough. And really his role takes off in the second half. And there is a really killer scene on and you see it in the trailer for a second in Albert Einstein and Oppenheimer hanging out by a lake. And what you don't see, and it's in the movie, is that Robert Downey Jr. is there in the background. And that plays a pivotal moment to this man's paranoia. Fantastic. I really, really liked what they did with this character. Whether it's true or not, I don't care. Josh Hartnett's in this film a lot. He plays one of Oppenheimer's um, kind of main co-workers in this. He's the physical guy. He's the guy who physically builds the hardware. And they met in Berkeley, and he's always telling Oppenheimer to get rid of the political shit because Oppenheimer was trying to unionize the darn faculty there. He's like, if you stop it, then we can get you in on the project, because he actually was in on the project before. David Krumholtz is in this. Krumholtz is fantastic. He's the conscience of Oppenheimer. He's an old friend as well. He's the conscience of Oppenheimer. This is a younger Oppenheimer, and they're both. It's also noted that they're both New York Jews. They're just kind of different as far as um, their background, but they're in a foreign land, and this is early in the movie, and Krumholtz's character is always reminding Oppenheimer to eat, because Oppenheimer's like this mad scientist. He just forgets to do the basics. Great character, great conscience of the movie. Here we are. Beautiful. This is another reason why to see this, guys, because yes, you're gonna get all the Nolan ass, all that stuff, but the characters, the cast of characters is really impressive, right? Because you don't just get Killian, you get Robert Downey Jr., Emily Blunt, Florence Pugh, Josh Hartnett, Krumholtz, like one after the other, and they all just kill it in the performances. And this is during that Kangaroo Court I told you about. They purposely put him in a private room with no recorders, no cameras, no publicity, because that's when Oppenheimer shined. Uh, to kind of grill him about his past, and they try to make him basically be a traitor. They try to paint him as a traitor, and they eventually denied him his his all access security pass. They revoked it. At first, Emily Blunt's character kind of just really didn't sit well with me. It got a little better. It is a weird character. I don't know if that's how a kitty is, but you know, eh, they had an affair. She was married. She divorced, and then she married Oppenheimer, and they had kids. Uh, she's She is a dogged, loyal defender of the. She does have a great scene, guys. She does have a great scene against all these gentlemen. I'll give him that. And that's Florence Pugh, whose character is rather mentally unstable. I don't want to ruin it for you, but it does not end well. She had some very admirable acting scenes. And Rami Malek's in it. Let's not forget Rami Malek. And I don't want to tell you what his character is. It's very, very pivotal. It's not in it a lot. But he delivers in what he does and what he says as his role. Love him. So that is the Oppenheimer spoilers reviews. I hope you enjoyed it.